Right wing, very strong. Poland into space.
Says it all.
Anyway, so the right wing, strong, very strong, and man upset about right wing being strong.
I mean,
This
it's
is
got
what this article
French in
is.
the title, so
Yes.
strong men, obviously.
This is David French being afraid of the strong men, particularly the right wing being strong. So this is the Atlantic article titled "The New Right: Strange and Dangerous Cult of Toughness." Dangerous. It's dangerous to be tough. How dare you be tough? That's bad.
Well, I
be
mean,
weak.
You're more difficult to control if you're tough.
Yeah, and this instantly reminded me of a lot of memes which have come around to describing the right wing in recent years. So I thought we'd just enjoy some of them first, which is, of course, this reminded me of an old Guardian article, if we go to the next one, in which, do you boast about your fitness? Watch out, you'll unavoidably become right wing. Good to know.
Great.
Right wing people, take care of themselves. All right, thanks.
This is not a dunk on the right wing. You know, this is where the stupid, sexy right wingers comes from.
You know, left wing outlet, The Guardian, is like, yeah, well, the right wingers, they take care of themselves. Good to know. And if we move on from this,
honestly, we can see how the left wing doesn't take care of themselves. They wear it proudly.
Yeah, but I love when the police get involved in this meme, which I wouldn't expect. There, you can see here, Bedfordshire police, verified checkmark. Get off Twitter.
Wait.
What are you doing on Twitter?
Wait.
Do you think you could spot signs of right-wing extremism? Do you know when someone would have hashtag crossed the line, says the police? And if we go on the image, it's a graphic that says, what will you decide? Cross the line. And it's someone getting a text, and the text says, hey, it was good to meet you yesterday at the gym. I'm going out tonight. Want to join? Question mark. That's it. That's right-wing extremism.
Are you going to allow yourself to become radicalized by lifting weights, or are you going to eat the donut?
But also, it's just like that if there is nothing in there that's descriptive of anything except maybe the gym part, right? So presumably going to the gym is the right-wing extremism from the police. Thanks, Bedfordshire police. Also agreeing with The Guardian that...
I mean, from this, I can only assume that it's
So
quite
silly.
easy to run away from the Bedfordshire police.
presumably.
Yeah.
They want to become right-wing extremists. They clinically avoid
They
any
have
exercise.
cake for breakfast, dinner, and lunch.
Part of the Prevent program. Get fat. Right. So we go to the next one. This isn't the first time either they continued with this. And as you can see, it starts with a guy you meet at the gym and ends with someone lying in the street. Would you cross the line? How far would you go? And it's just like...
So this is all coming across to me like the way that over lockdowns, they just kept shutting down the gyms as well. So, anything you could do to make yourself feel better.
They're far-right hotspots. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, God.
Like, the neo-Nazis are all meeting in the gyms. Well, you go to the gym and you work out, and by the end of it, you're just, killing black people, I guess.
You do one too many reps, you look in the mirror and your arms are just covered in SWAT stickers.
Yeah, boy, it's a very slippery slope there. Anyway, that's according to the police. I hate this country and the left-wing media, which you kind of expect from them. But back to David French. So he's very upset. So he writes here, the new right's strange and dangerous cult of toughness. An emerging culture idolizes a twisted version of toughness as the highest ideal and despises a false version of weakness as the lowest vice. So there's a false version of weakness and a fake version of toughness. It's like, right, okay, so what the hell is he talking about?
In my experience, it's the left that tends to twist language in such a way,
Yeah.
not the right.
But, the right might have learned a few tricks. So he says in here, last month at the National Conservatism Conference, a gathering of hundreds of leaders and members of a movement that hopes to represent a new, less libertarian American right. One of its speakers, a lawyer named Josh Hammer, delivered a strange denunciation of fusionism. For
Such
those,
an American name.
Yes. For those not steeped in the language of conservatism, fusionism refers to the alliance among economic conservatives, social conservatives, and defense hawks forged during the Reagan administration. It was designed to confront the government overreach at home and the threat of Soviet tyranny abroad. And you might be thinking, well, how's that bad? I mean, you fight socialism abroad.
I was going to say, the Reagan administration was pretty successful against the Soviets.
Yeah, so, I mean, you could see why it's a positive movement.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with fusionism, as would be described by the conservatives, is it's weak. It's fundamentally weak at fighting culture. And he just decries in here. He says, however, so what are the conservative arguments? Fusionism, Hammer said, is inherently effeminate, limp, and, as Hillsdale College David Arzed might say, unmasculine. It makes for a cowardly way to approach politics, in part because it ensues never having to face pushback from one's political opponents on the most contested issues. So that's the argument being put by the conservatives. And what I think he's talking to, and what I hope I'm right about is he's talking to, is the fact that it is weak on cultural change. You might be able to get good foreign policy objectives, like, getting rid of the evil empire, which, cool.
Yep.
Not going to be mad at those people for doing that. But on the cultural front, you let things by the net. Things getting in that really shouldn't be getting into your movement. And we've seen that very much with UK conservatives, haven't we? But we'll go to the US for some examples. And if we go to the next one, we have the Libertarian Party, which, yeah. So they say in here in this tweet, saying that Black Lives Matter isn't an endorsement of the organization Black Lives Matter, it's an endorsement of the movement calling for criminal justice reform, an end to the drugs war, and abolishing qualified immunity and holding agents of the state accountable. Think for a minute. What does the criminal justice reform mean to the Black Lives Matter movement? It means moving away from individual justice and moving towards racial justice or social justice, whichever one they picked this evening. And you can see this in action with their response to their martyrs and their devils. And, well, with one of their martyrs, Jacob Blake. He may have had a knife when he was shot by the police. Doesn't matter, though, because he is black.
Yes.
That's the argument. That's the level of debate.
I mean, that's basically it. As somebody who's quite partial to some libertarian views, I do not stand by this in the slightest. This is pathetic.
This is why many on the right see the Libertarian Party as cringe. And
yes, this is very cringe.
On this issue, I think correct. And of course, you can compare it to one of the devils of BLM, one of the people they hate, Carl Rittenhouse, who may have been defending himself from BLM rioters and attempted murderers, but he was white.
Supposedly.
Therefore guilty. I mean, yeah, legally he's Hispanic, so
yes,
throw that out the window. But it doesn't really matter. This is the way they think. This is what the criminal justice reform that they are describing when they talk about racial justice, because by definition, racial justice is not individual justice. It is what your race deserves, not what the individual deserves, which is why it's bad. Why it's not right-wing. Why it's something we shouldn't promote, libertarians, but...
Well, I mean,
see that, I don't think.
I think the thing there is that the libertarian arguments do have arguments against certain elements of criminal justice and the police system, but this just looks like they are projecting what they think it is
then you
onto
don't
the
stand
BLM
next
movement.
to BLM talking about such things, because
well, yeah, this is why
if you're
cringe
like,
and
we agree with
stupid.
BLM on criminal justice reform, it's like, what? I mean,
Yes.
you've got these tentacles in your hands, and it's like, maybe you just promote what you want, like the end of the drug war, right?
This
And that would be fine.
collectivism really appeals to my libertarian principles.
This is what I mean by letting things by the net. You could talk about the end of the drug war and all the rest of it, but putting your hands in the BLM sewer, it just makes your hand smell. So let's move on. So if we go to the other examples of this kind of conversation, we have it in Britain, of course, with David Cameron, who gave a speech, and as you can see titled here by the BBC at the time, State Multiculturalism Has Failed, says David Cameron. I mean, this was a breath of fresh air at the time, and everyone was shocked. How could it be that if we have loads of ghettos that never intermingle, we won't have a British culture and instead London? Big shock.
Wait, you mean that foreign cultures don't all just get along?
No, we have to integrate them. Anyway, so he says in here, quote, frankly, we need a lot less of the passive tolerance of recent years and much more active, muscular liberalism, the Prime Minister said. And yeah, migration control and incentives and disincentives to integrate isn't very libertarian. But it is necessary to keep what we have from becoming what we are importing. And if you don't do it, then the country is going to look like what you import and not what you had before. And this is where libertarians are weak and where we need that tough conservatism there on that point.
Yeah.
The social conservatives of that movement.
I think this is why there is a certain sect that I've only really encountered online, but there is a certain branch, like people like Sean, Actual Justice Warrior, who would consider themselves conservatarians, who have certain libertarian principles, but they marry them with more culturally conservative principles at the same time.
I mean, the libertarians are never going to be the enemies of the right or something, but there is just a lot there where you're just like, stop being cringe.
Yeah,
and this is an example of it.
I have read Mises, and there was one point where I was agreeing with everything he said until he just went, yes, a true liberal will support open borders. And I was like...
Yes, this is what I presume he's talking to, which is why you have the conservatives always saying stop being weak, and this is what they're hitting on, is the cultural issues. So anyway, back to the article. So in here, he says in here, long-time fusionists who are veterans not just of the intense and consequential debates surrounding foreign policy during the Cold War and the War on Terror, but also of countless successful courtroom contests designed to expand the First Amendment rights in the face of government censorship, might be startled by this news. And maybe, but I mean, if they'd actually seen what's been going on and the changes to the country, and then thinking, maybe we should do something about that, they wouldn't be startled. But it's hardly the oddest part of Hammer's critique. Fusionism is unmasculine. How is that claim a part of an alleged serious ideological argument? The critique however, helps illuminate the emerging culture of the right, a culture that idolizes a twisted version of toughness as the highest ideal, despises the false version of weakness as the lowest vice.
This is just a repackaged way of saying toxic masculinity.
It's kind of, yeah. It's
As far as I can tell.
Imagine having the courage of your convictions. Yeah, that was what was missing. So we brought it into politics.
Boris Johnson has shown that a true conservative is spineless.
You know what we really need is people who say, I want to do X, and they just not do it. That's the old conservative way, which we enjoyed. And it's like, no, actually, I'd like if Trump said, I'm going to build a damn wall and then build the wall. And it has all the funding there. I mean, it's very sad that Joe Biden came in and decided to just cut up the funding, so there are huge holes in it. But that's down to who won the election. Anyway, so going on from this, he says, claims of cowardice have particularly purchase among Trump followers. Coward is a one-word rebuttal that not only attempts to end an argument, but also aims to discredit the person who made it. Who wants to listen to a coward? Who wants to be known as a coward?
Good questions. Maybe don't be a coward.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say, for example, in Britain that we need to integrate immigrants, as David Cameron was, right? You know, he's out there giving that speech. That's him saying, we need to change this. And therefore, he's got some, the correct ideas, in fact. And there are a lot of people who were reeing about that at the time. They're like, no, let's keep all these ghettos, never touching, never intermingling.
Yes.
Let's not have their children meet.
Well, to be fair, it does give them an excellent example to point to about unequal outcomes.
But their argument would always be, not because they want to destroy the country, but, oh no, we can't challenge multiculturalism because then we'll look racist. And it's like,
it's complete relativism.
You're a coward. You're a moron. You're going to get this country destroyed with your cowardice. And that's exactly what is being hit on. Anyway, so what makes the claims of toughness and weakness especially curious and dangerous is the way in which they are tied to the person of Donald Trump, because he is an example of courage, but that doesn't get through to this guy. Although toughness has long been a populist virtue, especially in the South, the age of Trump transformed the right's definition of strength and courage by reference to the man himself. And what are Trump's alleged strong, masculine virtues? And then he goes on to attack him for trying to not go to Vietnam. It's like, okay, but that's not what the masculine virtues are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strengthen your convictions does not mean that you have to go and be a bully.
Like, it's President Trump they're looking to, candidate Trump, not, entrepreneur Trump, right?
Yeah, from back in the 70s.
But whatever, okay. So I'm just going to skip over that because it's just kind of silly. It's like, no one's looking to that. Otherwise, that man wasn't president, you idiot. Anyway, so he continues. This is a curious definition of manliness. Saying what you think or what others seem afraid to say isn't inherently manly. Sorry, let's read that again. This is a curious definition of manliness. Saying what you think or what others seem afraid to say isn't inherently manly. You're an idiot. Having courage is manly. Why would it not be manly? I mean, having the courage, everyone in the room doesn't want to talk about the elephant in the room. Let's say it's multiculturalism, right, with David Cameron. And, someone has the balls to stand up and say, this isn't working. This is going to get the country destroyed. We have to build a wall, beautiful wall, make the French pay for it. And that's courage. That's the courage of your convictions.
And also, why is it that these attributes could be classified as manly is because women don't want cowards, generally speaking. These are attributes that can draw, Well,
because it's what makes a man.
Yeah.
What is a man in your mind? That role. What's the ideal man? And a man is definitely someone who is courageous. It is not someone who is afraid, timid, and weak.
And two of the P's, provide and protect. And you provide and you protect by standing by your convictions and having courage.
But also warning of the threats that are taking place before everyone. Everyone can see it, but everyone is denying what they can see. And no, Donald Trump and a lot of other people have come to the fore, as he says, the populists, and said, well, what everyone can see but refuses to say. Speaking your mind isn't inherently virtuous, much less inherently masculine. Why wouldn't it be? If you believe X and instead you silence yourself, is that courageous? No, it's cowardly. It's cowardice, which is not manly. Being courageous is manly. Anyway, so he says Trump has said many false and harmful things, and the fact that other people might whisper them does not mean that they should be shouted from the presidential bully pulpit. Yeah, but the things you're very upset about is him pointing out the problems in the country. I mean, him saying that, we kind of have mass migration, illegal immigration, especially from Mexico, that needs to be sorted out. One of the things I love about the history of American immigration as well, you should really look up, there's a great video that's like... what is it? Immigration into the US by state. And it shows you the type of immigration, whether it's Germans, Swedes, Italians, Mexicans, whatever, right? Over the years. And you can see the diversity of immigration is pretty consistent, as in there's loads of different countries that people are coming from, loads of different cultures, right up until like very recently, which is just like 90% of the states are just Mexican.
Yes. I'd say that's kind of a predictable conclusion, sadly.
Yeah, but also just something no one talks about,
Well,
which
yeah,
I find interesting.
People on the left absolutely hate to acknowledge that diversity refers to more than just skin color.
But especially with immigration. Anyway, so the next quote from him: "The weakness/strength dichotomy works as a shield and sword. Any critique of Trump, Trumpism, or the new right can be dismissed as evidence of mere cowardice or fragility." Well, because it usually is. Like, we usually have some weak conservatives who are like, no, we can't talk about that, we'll lose votes. And it's like, yeah, but if we don't talk about it, we'll lose the country. Pick one.
Yeah.
So the never-Trumpers and classical liberals aren't strong enough to fight the right, the new right tells itself. Rather than doing what it takes to stand against the left, they retreat into the shelter of elitist spaces where the left welcomes them with open arms. Who can you think of the old movement who didn't have any strength to be proper conservative, especially in public, and has become very elitist in response to being thrown out, and has been welcomed into the left's arms?
Gonna have to enlighten me on that one.
Mitt Romney.
Ah, big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just go to the next article to prove this, which is just why Mitt Romney marched with BLM. This is it. This is exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
David. Specific example. Look to Mitt for no further. You can get a man who is a coward, had no conviction to stand up for conservatism, and instead just buckled because immediately he was like, well, racial justice. No, it's not individual justice. No one wants that crap.
Yeah. I know there are a number of conservatives who would also, obviously he's dead now, but lay the same claim at John McCain.
I'm not too familiar with him. So.
Well, apparently he was a
More
very,
familiar than
very, very anti-Trump, sort of going over into the Democratic establishment when previously, obviously, he was a Republican nominee for president.
But, we have Mitt Romney out there marching with BLM and voting for impeachment multiple times because he's butthurt. And too bad, get lost. You don't have any strength. You're a coward. You're not tough, as David French would call you. Anyway, so back to the article. This defiance of moral norms means that Trumpists' toughness was never and could never have been truly confined to online spaces or even to tough rhetoric. Boundaries are for the weak. So while Trump's new right allies and successors often treat Twitter as their Omaha Beach and angry tweets as the vicious assaults on online spaces equivalent to attacking German pillboxes with rifles and grenades, others know that becoming a keyboard warrior is hardly the highest masculine ideal. Maybe not, except it does cost things, doesn't it? Like your job, if you say the wrong thing on twitter.com.
Yeah, if you're not behind the layer of anonymity, if you're doing it from your own, with your own name and profile image and stuff, well, then yes, it could cost you something.
But then you are actually going in as the freedom fighters fighting against collectivist nonsense. You're out there fighting the diversity industry tweet by tweet or whatever else, right? Because you're going after these people, especially the leftist malaise, which we all find ourselves in, who will have your job if you don't agree with them.
Yes.
I mean, who's in the pillbox here, David? You and your friends. Anyway, so moving on from this. So he carries on saying, thus we see an increased prevalence of open carry AR-15s at public protests, the increased number of unlawful threats hurled at public opponents, and outbreaks of actual political violence, including large-scale violence on January 6th. And yes, violence bad. All violence bad. I think I'm compelled to say that, if nothing else. I don't know why someone wouldn't come to that conclusion, but we can see a distinct difference between patriotic violence and non-patriotic violence, and to ignore it would be dishonest, because, of course, you live in the United States. You're an American. How was that country formed? Through 1,000 years of having a king? No, it was through violent revolution. And in which case, how can you justify that? You're an American, for Christ's sake. Or, you could look, potentially, at Eisenhower's enforcement of integration in the schooling system, sending down the National Guard to enforce the integration. You could see that as a form of violence that's good for the country, or an Americanism, or people being made equal and all that.
The critical race theorists would label Booker T. Washington's recognition that after slavery, the black population could only raise itself up through education, and through education entrenched in what they would now call white cultural norms. They would see that as some form of violence as well nowadays.
But you could look at the Battle of Athens if you're an American as well. For people who don't know about the Battle of Athens, it was eventually a bunch of GIs who came home and found out the elections at the local level were rigged.
Oh, Dank did a video on this, didn't he?
Yeah, so then they literally overthrew the guy in charge and then ended up giving the votes over to the National Guard or whoever turned up and got the proper result.
The guy's rigging it. Democrats, weren't they?
I can't remember. I wouldn't be shocked. Anyway, so that's the point, which is just you can see political violence that is patriotic, restoring the order that was before, and, well, the new political violence, as he goes on to mention. One of the most dangerous developments in our continuous times has been the growth of radical ideologies, bolstered by radical intellectuals, who often treat decency and even peace as impediments to justice. Who does that describe? Who can you think of? Who are the new intellectual types who think peace and decency is the left? It's not pissing.
I mean, obviously.
And then he explicitly states it by saying, the riots that ripped through American cities were inexcusable expressions of political fury and sometimes nihilism that were too often rationalized, excused, and sometimes even celebrated. The author and academic Freddie DeBoer has compiled a depressing list of articles, essays, and interviews in prominent publications excusing and justifying violent and civil unrest. Yes, and you can say violence bad. I don't know why that's hard. But again, this violence is not the same as the Battle of Athens, for example, is it? No.
No.
It's collectivists, specifically the socialists, turning up, burning down the cities in the hope of a socialist revolution. They want to create disorder so then they can start the revolution. I mean, it's BLM, for Christ's sake. Take a guess at what they want. Racial justice. Anyway. So then he continues the last part of this, which we'll end on, which he says, the right-wing cult of toughness is distinctly, in its distinctly Trumpist version, is no exception to the trend. So, Chad, yes. I mean, again, the cult of toughness within the Trumpist movement. Cool. Like, who doesn't want that? And again, it's also the point of just like, every movement needs toughness. I mean,
yeah. How are you going to get anything done if you don't stand by your principles?
Yeah, if you don't actually have any confidence in your position that it's right and it needs to be done, then how is your movement ever going to get anywhere? I mean, you can look at this in like Tony Blair. I mean, him and his men, as evil as they are, do not have weakness as their virtue. No, we're going to reform this country how we want it, and that is them being tough in a evil way.
In a very strange way.
Fine,
Even the infiltration of subversion of the institutions takes a certain level of toughness, even if it does mainly involve just whining about stuff.
But he finishes off here. When it is drained of limiting principles and tied to a man who would rather seek to upend our nation's constitutional order rather than relinquish power, then the threat of the public is plain. Just, I don't like Trump. Of course you don't. That threat will remain under the supposedly weak classical liberals on the left and the right, who do what they've always done in at their best, rally in defense of liberty, rule of law, and the American order itself. So until we get Mitt Romney back, we don't have a proper right wing. No, I'm glad Mitt Romney and his ilk are gone, and we shouldn't be upset about that. But amazing. Just, I'm mad, because the right has found its stones, and they stand by their convictions. Okay, that's what we're missing in the UK.
Oh no, they're going to rally in defense of liberty. Oh no.
Anyway, but I thought we'd end this because I was pointed in the direction of this article from a guy I follow called David Raboy.
And
you could see him because he thought it was going to be the meme as I thought as well. I was reading Waiting for French to talk about the trend of lifting weights and improving your physique on the right. Shouldn't have been surprised that he fails to mention it with a picture of French, who's looking pretty average. Hey, nothing wrong with that. I'm an average guy. In weights, let's say. And but David Raboy's not. David Raboy is a goddamn human tank. So we go to the next one, and he shows it off because you got
God.
Look at that man. Look at that. I mean, if that's not, there's the point made by Carl. Virtue is evident. This man is obviously virtuous because he's able to stick to his diet, his regime, and therefore build his body mass as he wants to. He's achieved the thing he wanted to do. Whereas no one else. So, look, you look at David French. He doesn't have that demonstrable virtue, does he?
No.
No.
Neither do I at the moment, but this is reinvigorating me.
Hey, there's virtues other than being strong, of course, but David Raboy obviously proving that he's got that one. And the fact that David French didn't want to talk about it, I wonder why. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
We've got loads on there, and it's all really, really good. For example, we have regular premium articles that discuss contemporary events, and we have an audio track for our silver and gold tier members. And of course, we have our regular series on there. We've got Contemplations, which is Josh and whoever he wants to have talk to him about a particular topic. On this one, he's talking about Bo, about in-group preference. Moving on. Bo and myself also do the Epoch series, which says talking about history. This one's Belisarius Part 3, because Belisarius was a 6th century Byzantine general, and he had an amazing career and a genuinely tragic end. And the myth of him is old blind Belisarius begging on the streets of Rome. would have been better than what happened to him, but I won't spoil it. I'll let you figure out. I'll let you find out. And of course, we do our regular book club as well this week's or this month's. I don't know how often we do them actually. Fairly regularly. It takes a while to read a book. But this is Callum doing John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, in which I rail against utilitarianism. I used to be a huge fan of John Stuart Mill, like 5-10 years ago. And since then, I've really soured on utilitarianism. And so the framing of his arguments, I find kind of insufferable. He's not wrong in what he's arguing for, but it's the way he's doing it. But anyway, we also do a bunch of premium podcasts, things that are entertaining, we think, like the politics of Star Trek that I did with John, talking about, well, is Star Trek a socialist paradise or not? It turns out it's not, but it's, it's something different. Post-scarcity liberalism, basically. But that's a really good podcast. And we also have to put up things on the website that we can't actually put on YouTube because YouTube has editorial policies about things such as where all these heart attacks are coming from. Giant elephant in the room. It's probably climate change. Don't worry about it. We also have fascinating interviews from really interesting people, such as this one, which is an activist called Luke Avery, who's a Christian, but don't worry, he's not Bible thumping in this. What he's doing is talking about the ancient wisdom in the biblical book of Proverbs, and it's very much daddish sort of stuff, and I really enjoyed doing this one. And I think I'll have him back in, hopefully, to do another one, Ecclesiastes or something, and hopefully we'll do another one soon.
And if you want to keep up with us, you can follow us on getter.com. I love the phrase getter doing, something like that. I don't know.
You're doing really well on there, though, aren't you? You've got like 11,000 followers.
So come follow me on Getter, come follow you on Getter.
Yeah. And lotuses.com on Getter.
Lotuses_com on there. Let's go check that out. And also the conference itself. So this is a conference being put on by the Getter guys. This is on the December the 8th. So update on this, the Getter conference has been postponed until further notice. We will let people know as soon as we have more information. Apparently it was postponed thanks to the global freakout in response to the Omicron variant. So sorry about that. So if you'd like to get access to all that premium content, you can subscribe at lotuseaters.com. Thank you and goodbye.